What is up, Dynasty Leaguers? Welcome back into another DLF YouTube video. After wrapping up my one quarterback first round rookie profile series, running through my 101 through the 112, I mentioned that I wanted to also do another video just kind of talking and running down through the remaining number of interesting prospects of players that I really like to target at the end of the first round or early second round and on, and then players that I'm also fading in that range as well, and just kind of give a quick overview of the remaining players that I didn't really get to talk about yet. I will also do another one of these videos for the quarterback position only, specifically in a Superflex tailored format to really talk about the top 5 quarterbacks and then where they can actually slot out in Superflex first round rookie drafts. But today's video is going to be focusing on at least the remainder of the running back position, the wide receiver position, and the tight end position. If you missed any of the previous 12 videos on my rookie profiles, I ran through my top 4 running backs, my top 7 wide receivers, and Kyle Pitts, my tight end 1 as well. So if you missed any of those, go back and check those out. Otherwise, we're going to be talking about the rest of these players in this 2021 class. So let's get into it. So we can start at the running back position because I think that is the easiest one to kind of complete out the rest of the way, because this is not a very strong running back class. My top 4 running backs that I've talked about and did specific video rookie profiles on are Najee Harris, Travis Etienne, Javonte Williams, and then Kenneth Gainwell. So those are my top 4. And then really after that, I think there's a pretty significant drop off to the next tier. And then after that tier is a huge drop off from there. So we can talk about this next tier. I would like to highlight first Jamar Jefferson out of Oregon State. He looks like a very strong profile analytically. Hits on 4 of my markers already in terms of weight, BMI, receptions, and yards from scrimmage in his freshman and sophomore year with a 1,500 yard season. Does not hit on yards per carry. We're waiting on 40-yard dash, speed score, and then I don't expect that he'll be a first or second round guy. So he's probably going to end up being a 5, maybe a 6 marker type of a running back, which is very solid. I'm very interested on the draft capital. I think he could sneak in at the end of day 2, just given the limited availability at the running back position in this class. And if he does do that, I will be pretty into him in the early second rounds of one quarterback leagues or the mid second rounds of Superflex leagues because of the quarterback pushing him. And that would just be, I think, entirely because of, like I said, the running back shortage in this class. And Jefferson looks like a pretty solid running back candidate as my RB5. The next one would be Michael Carter, and that would be the running back duo with Javonte Williams at North Carolina. Carter also looks pretty strong analytically, also hits on 4 of these markers, including weight, BMI, receptions, and yards per carry. Does not hit on yards from scrimmage in his first 2 years. That's because he was primarily sharing the backfield with Javonte Williams as well, and was kind of that 1B in that situation. Still missing 40, still missing speed score, and we do not have the draft capital, and I don't expect him to be a first or second round player like Jamar Jefferson either. I think he could also slide into the end of day 2, if not being a very early day 3 type of player, which is kind of why he slides down into the back of this tier for the running back position, but also could be a very strong, mid to late second round pick for a team that is looking to just invest in running backs and just hope and hold on that they end up doing something. Like, I could really see Michael Carter, even though that they signed, Carlos Hyde, if Michael Carter ends up going to the Jacksonville Jaguars in like the 4th round, I think that would be very solid for, not only just James Robinson and his prospects moving forward, but Michael Carter could be in line for a pretty solid workload if anything were to happen to James Robinson. And that's just really the kind of situation that I'm looking for Carter to slide into. That's really what I'm looking for Michael Carter. I also would like to mention Ramondre Stevenson as well out of Oklahoma. Also hits on 3 markers, weight, BMI, and yards per carry. I am not 100% sure on what the NFL is going to think of him because he was suspended during his time at Oklahoma for, I think, 8 games from the end of his next to last season into his final season at Oklahoma in 2020. And so just because of that, I'm not sure if he's going to get the draft capital, but he could be one of those sneaky kind of players. I wouldn't necessarily go second round with him, but just another running back that I think you guys should be aware of as, like I said, a sneaky running back who could ascend depth charts kind of quickly if he goes to the right situation, because he has that athletic profile and the talent, I think, to surprise some people in the NFL. Finally, then we can talk about Chuba Hubbard, guy that has really slid down draft boards and rookie boards over the past year, basically. He was talked about and highlighted as one of the premier running backs in this draft class. And then, whatever happened last year happened, just a major underproduction. 2,300 total yards, very early, put him on the map. Also hits on weight and just barely misses on best receptions at a 23 reception season. Barely misses in BMI, barely misses in yards per carry. Like, his profile is like super close in a lot of other stuff, but he's also slid down a lot of draft boards coming out of Oklahoma State. And so he's a guy I think who could slide up into this Jamar Jefferson, Michael Carter range if the draft capital is right for him. But I could also see him just kind of being a guy that fades and fizzles out if he ends up being like an Eno Benjamin type of a player who, surprisingly drops to the 7th round. And that's kind of where we're at as like an RB3, RB4 on his team's depth chart. So I think Hubbard could go one way or another. Not really sure at this point, but just another player that I would like to mention from the running back position. Now, I think that's going to do it, at least for the running backs. I'm sure there are other names on here that we could talk about, like Trey Sermon, Jarrett Patterson, who both players also have really strong production seasons early on. But I'm really not 100% on the draft capital on all this, and that's really one of the biggest things for running backs and rookie running backs coming into the NFL is gaining that draft capital, that confidence from their NFL team to get immediate opportunity. And I'm not sure, outside of the top 4, 5, maybe even 6 running backs in this class, if any of these guys are really going to be worth mentioning about, because they're all going to be 5th round picks or later. So that's just kind of where I'm at with the running backs. We can move on to wide receivers then, because this is a very strong wide receiver class. I've already talked about 7 wide receivers from Jamar Chase, Rashad Bateman, Devontae Smith, Rondale Moore, Jalen Waddle, Tylan Wallace, and then Elijah Moore were my 7 wide receivers that I've already run down and made videos on. And then there's like this whole other group that I really have been trying to like dissect, but I can't really separate a lot of these guys. And I think it would be highlighted and spearheaded by Terrace Marshall out of Louisiana State, LSU. And I think that is one of the players that a lot of people would probably think that I missed, or would have a lot lower than a lot of other people. He is the 111 in rookie ADP in March for one quarterback ADP, and I did not have him in my top 12. I had Elijah Moore and Tylan Wallace ahead of him. But Marshall, I think, would be the top player that's left. He would be my wide receiver 8 after those 2 players, because he does have a pretty strong analytical profile, 20-year-old, 30% breakout age, 33% career dominator rating. And really the only negative for him was that he was behind Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase. And then because Jamar Chase was opted out of 2020 is really where he was able to showcase his talents. In only 7 games, averaged over 100 yards per game, over 1 receiving touchdown per game in 2020 with LSU. And so I think he's one of the big risers in this class, and I think he would head kind of this top group of players that I'm going to run down. The next couple of them would be Diami Brown, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Seth Williams. I think are all very interesting in their own regards. They all have 18 or 19-year-old 20% breakout ages and 20-year-old 30% breakout ages. And they all have very solid dominator ratings and a lot of that other stuff and markers that you want to see from the wide receiver position. Tutu Atwell, I think, could be another guy that you can throw into this list as well. 19-year-old, 30% breakout age out of Louisville with a very solid sophomore season in 2019, but he didn't really do much in 2020, at least compared to his sophomore season. So that whole group of like 4 wide receivers right there is going to be really interesting to dissect moving forward, especially when we get draft capital as an additional context. And I cannot really parse out between this group. Like Seth Williams looked pretty good. He had some early production. Amon-Ra St. Brown obviously had a freshman production at USC. Dyami Brown looks really, really good, and I know he's a RotoViz favorite. I listened to Curtis Patrick talk about him in a clubhouse meeting where he was mentioning that Dyami Brown has 2 seasons with over 20 yards per reception, which is pretty insane and pretty crazy and compares well to a lot of other successful receivers in the NFL, like Mike Evans, I remember was being one of them. This was a couple weeks ago, so I don't really remember the whole spiel that he ran down, but I know that he highlighted Dyami Brown pretty hard. So if you're into RotoViz, and I know a lot of people over there and respect a lot of people at RotoViz and follow a lot of their work, so hearing Curtis Patrick talk about Dyami Brown like that definitely put him on my radar. There's just a lot, you can kind of pick and choose your own and your favorite wide receivers out of this group. Some of them might be ahead of Tylan Wallace, Elijah Moore, maybe even Jalen Waddle or Rondale Moore, depending on how your wide receiver rankings go out. But just for me personally, I have all these guys in kind of a really, really big group. And I personally would just like to move down. If I'm staring at Terrace Marshall, I think I can move down a couple spots, maybe pick up a second in a year or two again to move back down a few spots, maybe pick up an early third or something like that, or a backup running back in the NFL, and then just drop from Terrace Marshall and go down to Amon-Ra St. Brown, or maybe even a Dyami Brown, who's getting late rookie ADP draft capital according to DLF March ADP. And so that's just kind of how I see this whole entire group. Lastly, I think Tamorrion Terry, you could throw in at the back end of this group. Also has a 20-year-old, 30% breakout age. Doesn't really have the dominator rating over his whole career. He is an older prospect at 23 years old, coming out of Florida State. But I think you can kind of put him in at the tail end of this, because I also think he could get similar draft capital, maybe like a round 4 draft capital, to throw him up into here as well. The final wide receiver that I want to talk about, that a lot of you are maybe wondering why I haven't mentioned him at all, because he is getting a lot of hype and even first round draft capital type of hype. And that is Florida wide receiver Cadarius Toney. And I am pretty scared of Cadarius Toney's profile. I don't really get it, right? Like, I saw that video of him at the Senior Bowl where he shake and bake this cornerback really, really hard and then ended up dropping the ball on the sidelines. I don't really care about drops. I'm not knocking him for that. I saw the video, and Cadarius Toney out of Florida, I don't really get it. I don't get it. I actually was doing a little bit of research for this, and I looked into Cadarius Toney specifically because he is an older 21-year-old breakout senior season prospect, which I generally do not like. And at least my database and his comps and everything definitely agrees with me on that one. So I looked up and I tweeted out actually this stat because I thought it was actually really good. I said, of the 148 wide receivers with a 21-year-old or older 20% breakout age and no 30% breakout age, 120 of those 148 wide receivers, or 81%, were day 3 picks or later. Some of them were undrafted. A large majority actually were undrafted. Only 3 wide receivers of the 148, only 3 had at least one top 24 season. That was Santana Moss, who did it 4 times. Javon Walker did it twice back in the early 2000s. And then Kelvin Benjamin did it once as well. Hollywood Brown and Deebo Samuel would also potentially join that list if either were to do it as well. But so far in their short careers, we haven't necessarily seen that on a whole consistent year basis, right? Because of injury or whatnot, outside factors. But Cadarius Toney fits that mold as well, as a 21-year-old, 20% breakout age wide receiver with no 30% breakout age wide receiver. And so I really am not in on Cadarius Toney. I know a lot of people are probably like, well, he's going to get first round draft capital. That, at least, and I've shown in previous wide receiver videos, gives him a 50-50 shot at success in the NFL alone. But, he's really behind the 8 ball when you look at all the previous wide receivers that have come before him. A lot of them don't even get the draft capital that Toney is projected to get. And even the ones that did, like a Hollywood Brown, they haven't succeeded really at the next level. And so if that's really what you're banking on, as your, potentially a top 5 wide receiver. I've seen him ranked, or maybe just outside of that after the top and major big 4 or 5. I'm really not in on that one. And you can have your own opinions. You can formulate your own analysis from all of this as well. But that's at least where I stand with Cadarius Toney and in terms of his analytical and prospect profile. It's just I'm not really about that life. So then finally we can talk about the tight end position, because I think there are 2 tight ends in this class after Kyle Pitts that are really, really worth talking about. And that is Penn State tight end Pat Freiermuth and Miami tight end Brevin Jordan. I think both of these guys could be and would be talked about a lot more if they were not in a Kyle Pitts class. I think both of them would have their own arguments and debates as to who would be the tight end 1 if Kyle Pitts was not in this class, because I think both of them excel and do different things. Pat Freiermuth is much more of a prototypical blocking tight end with very, very good receiving ability. A lot of people have been calling him Baby Gronk just because of that ability to block, but then also, go out 10, 15 yards and catch the ball down the seam and then make something happen with it. Not like a Zach Ertz or like a Heath Miller tight end where they just kind of catch it and then get tackled. This is more of a Gronk dynamic type of playmaking ability with the ball in his hands, yards after the catch kind of a guy. Brevin Jordan can kind of do that as well in terms of the blocking, but he is much more of a receiving threat, much similar to Kyle Pitts in that aspect. And he actually has a very solid breakout age when you talk about a 15 and 20% dominator rating thresholds instead of 20 and 30% for wide receivers. Brevin Jordan has a very solid and 19-year-old breakout age for tight ends. That's actually one of the highest in this class. So he looks very strong there. Pat Freiermuth also has a very high, and I think it's a 20% breakout age as well for Pat Freiermuth. And so both players, I think, with day 2 draft capital, because I do assume that both of them are going to get either late 2nd or 3rd round draft capital, would be very, very strong, like I said, in non-Kyle Pitts classes. So I think both players are very good selections for you in your late 2nd rounds or 3rd rounds of your 1 quarterbacks or super flex leagues. I think both are going to provide very awesome stability at the tight end position. You might have to wait a little bit just in general, like how rookie tight ends are, like a TJ Hawkinson, Noah Fant, kind of took a couple years kind of thing. But I think both of those players could be in that mold, and I think we need to be really, really excited for them, specifically because in free agency we potentially just lost Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry, at least lost their ceilings because they're both on the New England Patriots. So after Kelsey, Kittle, Darren Waller, Hawkinson, Fant, and Mark Andrews, there is like nothing, and we were really hopeful on Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith, and Logan Thomas comes in there as well. But then, you got Kyle Pitts, obviously coming in as a top 5 tight end off the rip. Then I think we need to be talking about Pat Freiermuth and Brevin Jordan, who could come in as immediate top 10, at least tight end 1s in the current tight end landscape right now. And I think both are very, very solid players that you should be targeting in your rookie drafts. And I think you should be targeting them at least over the running backs after you get past, Jamar Jefferson and Michael Carter as well. I think, basically once you include those 2 in and then the quarterbacks in at some point, it's going to be a whole bunch of wide receivers and sprinkle in Freiermuth and Brevin Jordan. And that's kind of where we're at with the rest of this class. Like I said at the top of the video, I will be doing one of these videos specifically on the quarterbacks on the top 5: Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, Trey Lance, and Mac Jones. Not necessarily in that order. That's just the order that came to me in my head. But we'll go with it. So thank you all so much for tuning in and watching this video on the rest of my players after my top 12. If you like this content or more from DLF, please subscribe to the DLF YouTube channel, like this video, ring that notifications bell, hit up that Dynasty Draft Guide, become a DLF Premium member at DLF. You get the 140-page PDF Dynasty Startup Draft Guide for 100% free. So with that all being said, guys, thank you all so much, and we will catch you all later.